let's start the show.
For Thursday, January 26th, 2017. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com.
Jeremy's feeling the spirit.
Because we got the crew back together.
You can picture the band playing that song if you try hard enough.
Is there a band? How many? One person band?
I don't know. This guy on the bass that really knows that last note.
Boom. Yeah. I always think of it as a big drum, but I guess you're right. It's a bass. Thanks everyone for joining this week. I am back from vacation, and first of all, I want to say that you guys did an amazing job last week. Good job, Jeremy.
It was 100% perfect. No errors whatsoever.
That's right.
I'm being
let's
sincere.
move on.
I listened to the episode
Right.
on my flight back, and you guys sounded great.
That's good, dude.
I do want to give a shout out to all the people on YouTube that didn't narc on us. Thank you.
Yeah. It was slightly out of focus, but maybe people's vision isn't great.
You're all very cool about it.
Very cool.
Wipe down your screens, Butterfingers.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But I thought the episode was great, and the whole time I was listening, I wanted to chime in. It was very difficult to get through the 2 hours without wanting to say something.
Yeah, you're so used to it. You sit here, you hear our voices, you get that moment to jump in. You couldn't.
Couldn't do it. I was looking left and right, and I couldn't see anyone's faces. I closed my eyes and listened to it. And
Well, we'll give
it
you
was
30
fine.
seconds right now. So this Switch thing,
Oh, right. Hold on.
I mean, do you want to...
Whoa, that's a new sound effect.
Did you pre-order it?
I did pre-order the Switch, and I'm 100% on Jeremy's side. Sorry, Kishore. I'm going to buy it for the Nintendo games. I'm going to encourage, I'm going to support their wacky controller. I think the weird thing is that it's going to replace both the Wii U and the 3DS. Is there no dedicated console system, set-top system, and mobile system going forward? Is that consolidating everything in one bucket? Is that too much of a risk? Also, I'm really curious about the processing power. If the fidelity is supposed to be on par with Nintendo Wii U, then can the NVIDIA custom Tegra X1 chip actually run Zelda at 60 FPS, even when it's running at 720p, or you can actually get graphics parity. And also, since then, Wii U, they announced they would be closing the Wii U production, and Zelda would be the last first-party game made for the Wii U. So
That's right.
That time to jump on board the Switch. That's all I got to say about
So
Switch.
what is backwards compatibility going to look like? I mean, obviously it doesn't play anything.
Yeah.
But will I be able to download games that I own on the Wii U, do you think?
Nintendo says they have not announced anything at the time, but you got to imagine that's something that's going to happen.
Because I want to sell my Wii U. I'm happy to sell it if I'm getting the new console. I just want, I want to be able to play Super Mario Brothers, Wii or whatever the Wii U one is. I want to play those games.
And is it going to be multiplayer backward compatible?
What do you mean?
Like if someone buys Mario 8.
Like
right.
they play on both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen more and more issues emerging about concerns about battery life. And Steve touched on that last week. Do you have concerns about that?
No, that's the thing I'm actually not worried about because it's USB-C on both the dock and the controllers. Yeah, it's not going to work for flights, but Nintendo obviously doesn't care about people flying on airplanes because you need to be internet connected to play Super Mario Run. So, 2 or 3 battery. The fact is that you can use a generic USB power pack and power your Switch going forward, and that's something you couldn't do with the 3DS.
All right. Anything else you want to say about our show last week?
Great show.
It's good having Steve on.
Yeah.
It's great having Steve.
I liked hearing about his Japanese adventures. I wish he talked a little bit more about the VR parks that he went to.
We saved the Pocky for
Oh my
you.
God, there is Pocky.
He did bring goodies. I've put it aside until you got back.
Banana.
Crystal salty Pocky.
That I've never seen crystal salty
kinda
Pocky before.
Crazy Kit Kat. So
Is that the Kit Kat that won't break? That breaks into separate. Oh, it doesn't go all the way in the middle.
Yeah.
What? This is perfect for the Lunar New Year.
It's
coming up this weekend.
also quite subtle in its maple flavor. It's very nice.
Yes, the maple bread. Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. I'm not going to eat it on the podcast. But what else did I miss?
There's a few things that happened. We inaugurated a new president. The next day, we had the largest protest in American history.
That's right.
I participated in a school-based protest against the transferring of a teacher at my school. So I've been participating in public meetings at the school district. I've made signs with my child, like been in meetings everywhere, getting my protest spirit on. Oh, that might be me. Got to shut down Slack notifications.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been totally sick.
Oh, sorry to hear that. So I definitely was aware of the protest. I regretfully was unable to participate on vacation. But did you guys go, and how was it?
I supported my wife. She went downtown San Francisco,
Mm.
and she did the walk downtown.
My wife was very fired up about it. She went to Oakland and to the San Francisco one, and I initially wasn't going to go, but I was just watching the news that day with my son, and he saw all the crowds, and he was like, he wanted to go. So we like hopped on public transport, went down there. He wore a bunch of Spider-Man gear,
Yeah.
made a sign that said, "With great power comes great responsibility."
That's
walked
super cool.
around.
That's great.
Yeah, I just watched my kids at home. Was you watching it on TV?
We were watching like CNN, just like all the protests from around the country.
Got it.
And he just got interested. San Francisco was challenging because it was raining a lot.
Mm.
I had a really good experience. It felt very welcoming, and there's a lot of clever signs out there.
I mean, the point is
Good time.
to be heard, right? Of the protests, and that's the volume of people, and get the media attention. But while you're there, were there moments? Did you have encounters that made you feel better connected and with the community?
For me, it was just seeing how many other people were out there. I saw this group of people in San Francisco called Defend Science came out. They're all in lab coats, and they had all science messages on their signs, which to me is particularly uplifting, given the areas that I'm interested in. But it was just great seeing that many people out there doing something together. And there was a lot of diversity in the people that I saw out there, and it was generally really happy. Most protests I've ever seen or been a part of have a real swell of like anger and resentment. This felt differently to me. It felt more palatable. I felt welcome to take my 6-year-old. How about that?
Yeah, and I think really when you're just at home or just on a computer, it's really easy in today's climate to feel isolated and not connected. And whether people in office or the people you supported or not, to feel like there's no one else in the community, but being just reaching out and being among other people definitely helps.
I don't know if it has like lasting impact or anything else like that. That's for other podcasts to pine over. But the part of the reason I went is like, at least to my son, he saw so many people out there doing it. It felt historic in some way, shape, or form. So I'm really glad I went.
And it's fostered maybe more gatherings, more marches in the coming months. So that's something definitely being talked about and to spread around in social media. And so I don't think it's something that's going to stop with just this one event.
No, I'm already working with a group that's working on a March for Science in D.C. and in other cities around the country. So it's definitely spawned other protests. We'll have to wait and see how effective they are, how effective that message is in reaching a broader audience. But at least for that day, 1% of the U.S. population was out on the streets.
Well, the past week has given you guys a lot to march about.
Oh, yeah, that's going to come up in the Science Minute. I know we don't aim to have a lot of political conversations on here. This week has to be a little bit different for Moment of Science.
Oh, absolutely.
So if anyone doesn't want to hear that, I'll put timestamps there. You can skip it, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah, I think echo chamber is part of the problem. I encourage everyone to keep listening. A lot of people are saying, unsubscribe to POTUS at POTUS on Twitter, and now subscribe to Barack. And I said, let's subscribe to both. Let's keep our ears open. We got to keep our ear to the ground and keep all the information in.
So while I didn't have the opportunity to march in a large crowd, I did get my steps in this past week, and I racked up over 20,000 steps a day.
So remind us where you were.
So this past week on vacation, Danica and I went for our very first time to Disney World. Now, this was our mini moon, mini as in Minnie Mouse. And
Do yourself a favor and don't even associate the word moon to this.
What did you just say? Mini moon?
Mini moon.
Is that a thing?
No, we
Okay.
just made it up.
All right.
Like There's
Alright.
the honeymoon,
Yeah, yeah.
and then there's a mini moon.
With you. Okay.
So I've never been to Disney World, but we don't hide the fact that we're big Disney fans. Me and Danica, and I think you too, Jeremy, right? The people in this room can appreciate Disney. I know there's a lot of people who maybe don't like the crowds. I know Adam doesn't like the crowds for sure, but they don't see a lot of purpose in going to amusement parks or theme parks. I love the theme park experience.
There's a lot of sides to liking Disney. I think if you tell a non-Disney fan that you like Disney, they might just think, oh, you like the Disney movies, or
Right.
you like stuffed animals. But there's actually a lot of sides to it if you start to look at the Imagineering and you think about the engineering and the thought and the creativity and the philosophy behind customer service. There's a lot of angles that I find interesting.
Let me put in a little extra weight here. So my family is talking about our big Christmas trip together, like my big extended family. And I'm trying to argue for Disney World this year.
Wow.
And I haven't been to Disney World since I was a teenager, like 15 or so.
Me too.
And my kid hasn't been to any of the Disney. He's a pure Disney virgin. So I'm going to listen to this explanation as a convince me that we should go to Disney World.
Well, I would say that, how old is your kid?
6.
6. I think 6 is a great age, so maybe just go to Disneyland first. Disney World may be a little overwhelming, and I know kids have a lot of energy, but I was burned out by 6 days of going to all these parks.
Let's get the details. Where'd you go?
So
give us the overarching list of all the parks you went to.
It was also my first time going to Disney World, Walt Disney World, and I'm even repping the sweater today, the Epcot sweater. And Will I heard from everyone like Will and Jeremy about Disney World being massive, right? Everyone says you may have gone to Disneyland, you may have been to Universal Studios Hollywood, but nothing's going to prepare you for the scale of Disney World. It's the size of a city. And it really is. Like Disney World is a compound, is the best way to think about it, where within the perimeter is 50 square miles. That's the amount of square footage as San Francisco, the peninsula. But that's not all park. Of course, most of it is just greenery, foliage. It's trees, forests, and roads. And you can't. It's not like you're walking in a city from place to place. The only places you're walking are within the resorts and the actual theme parks themselves. So when you think of Disneyland in Anaheim, there are 2 theme parks there. There's Disneyland and also California Adventure next to each other. In Disney World, there are 4 theme parks. There's the equivalent of Disneyland, which is Magic Kingdom. Then there's also Animal Kingdom, which is like a Disney version of a zoo, but not like San Diego Zoo. And then there's Epcot, and then there's Hollywood Studios, which is like California Adventure. And some are bigger than others. Some you call them like maybe half-day parks. You maybe do everything you want to do in one day. And some you would need to spend a couple of days there to really do and maximize everything. But also within the compound, in addition to the 4 parks, are 18 resorts. So in Anaheim, there are 2 Disney. I went on a deep dive, by the way, because I went with people who worked for Disney, and they gave me the information. I was like curiosity the whole time, asking questions about everything. Disneyland has 2 hotel resorts. It's surrounded by a bunch of third-party hotels and other things, but there's Disneyland Hotel and there's the California Adventure, Grand Californian. Disney World has 18 hotel resorts on its property, which is insane. And
Did you stay at one?
We did. So we stayed at one of the budget ones. It was called Pop Century, and it's themed to have like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and it was a fun experience.
Some of them were super upscale. Too.
Some were,
like,
yeah.
They range all the way to like 5-star experiences.
You could have the whole Polynesian hotel hut on top of water experience in Florida, basically, and make it feel like you're in Fiji. Or you could have there's a whole boardwalk that's recreated, almost like Boardwalk Empire boardwalk. That's part of their boardwalk resort, but that's not part of any park. It's just you can drive in there, you can stay there, and you can have your meals there and go to the restaurants there and shop there. So we stayed at a resort, but we did go between the different resorts because I was really curious to see how they were built out. And the big word that I'm going to use when talking about the trip is theming. Theming is my favorite part of the Disney experience, I guess you'd call it. Why I go to a Disneyland park, why I go to the resort, why I even make the effort in the first place. And that's the set dressing, how they decorate, design, and build facilities and structures and decor to look like certain eras or certain worlds, whether it's on a specific amusement ride or in just the facade of a building. And the theming at Disney World is incredible. So, and that includes, building out their castle in the middle of Magic Kingdom. But like, if anyone's been to Disneyland, the layout of Disneyland is very much like the layout of Magic Kingdom. You walk in, you see a big castle in the middle. They're different castles, but on the right is Tomorrowland, on the left is Adventureland. So it was very much like walking into a parallel universe. This is the closest I would feel like, because I knew where everything was, but there were some things that weren't there. I knew Space Mountain would be on the right, but there wasn't Star Tours there because Star Tours is at Hollywood Studios. I knew on the left there would be, the Tiki Hut, and also you get some Dole Whip on the left. You go down Main Street, so it had very familiar aspects, but it was also Dole Whip. And at Disney World, side note, you can also get alcohol, which you can't get at Anaheim's Disneyland. So they really encourage parents and adults to buy your alcoholic beverages. So it was like a parallel universe Magic Kingdom.
You can get alcohol in the private club at
You
Disneyland.
can, Club 33.
You don't have a membership?
No, I don't have a membership. Never been. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite, park or area
Oh,
that
God.
you saw?
Okay, so 4 parks. We did each park one day, and then we also went to Universal Studios, which is a whole separate conversation. And then we revisited some parks, and the parks we revisited were Epcot. So again, I'll go through the 4 ones. There's Magic Kingdom, which is very much like Disneyland, minus some of the rides. Some of the rides are a little different. Everything's a little more spaced out because they just have the space. If you're gonna build out, in I think it was 1970s when they built Disney World. If you're gonna build out Disneyland in Florida, everything is kind of like 1.2 size scale because they get the longer sidewalks, longer streets, just to make it feel less crowded. And also, Kishore, for your planning purposes, don't go during the holidays. We went during the best time, which is right after the holidays.
I know it's going to be insanely crowded. Like, there's no true down season anymore, is what people tell me. Like, was it still pretty crowded?
It was perfect. Weather was perfect. We only had one rainy day, and it was really, it felt empty to be, knowing how packed Disneyland usually is. So Magic Kingdom, I thought it was great, but it was one of those you get it done, see their version of the thing you're familiar with in Anaheim. But it was really those 3 other parks that were interesting. Hollywood Studios, maybe a little less interesting because that one was very much California Adventure, and we live in California. I've been to real Hollywood, so they had their, Mann's Chinese Theater replica. You had your Star Tours, your Tower of Terror, which they've closed down in Disneyland now because they're building the Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's not where they have a lot of the Star Wars stuff, though?
They do. They had a whole Star Wars area. Hollywood Studios, they're always building stuff. So Hollywood Studios felt less crowded because there was a whole section that was going to be their Star Wars land. And that was still under construction, of course. So they filled out a lot of Star Wars theming around the park instead of that, because you have Rogue One and Force Awakens, which came out. So they had marches for the First Order, you had Phasma, you had your shows. Star Tours was, of course, there.
Did you fight Darth Vader?
I did not do Jedi Training Academy. I'm a little too old for that.
You're never too old for Jedi Training Academy.
There was a museum of props. So they had helmets. They had miniatures, ships. Some things I love is they have these Force Order stormtroopers walking around, and they don't stop for pictures. They just walk and march as if they're patrolling. But I walked into one of the rooms with the props, and it was really empty, which I thought was kind of sad. Like, why don't people appreciate the helmets and the props and the lightsabers here and the costumes? It was empty, and I realized it was empty because this is where one of the shows emptied into.
Oh.
Right? Like, there were doors that would open up every half hour, and people would leave. But we were looking at the props, and these First Order stormtroopers walked in, and one of them then walked into like an alcove and just stood still, and one of them stood still in the middle of the room. And then the doors opened, and people walked out. And they're like, oh, great show, great show. Ooh, costumes and props. And they would look around. Oh, look, stormtroopers, and take pictures. And then it took like 2 minutes before they started moving. And people then realized they weren't statues, they were real people. So it's a nice little surprise and delight for the fans.
The videos I've seen of the stormtroopers, they don't talk with using their normal voice. Did you see these guys talk at all?
They didn't talk at all.
Most characters don't talk.
Yeah.
But the stormtroopers actually have sound boxes.
They do.
So they can
Interesting.
they can emit pre-recorded stormtrooper phrases.
So it's not what like the 501st do with the voice
No.
modulators.
No.
It's just pre-recorded things.
Yeah.
And like when there are marches and pre-planned like parade type events, they'll have speakers, and so it's all scripted, pre-scripted actions and sounds. Hollywood Studios I thought was really fun because they had a lot of stuff paying tribute to classic movies in the form of animatronics, and so I like that. But it's really a half-day park. Animal Kingdom was a complete surprise. I really enjoyed it. Had probably the most theming of any of the parks, and it's maybe one of those things like you can feel two ways about it. You can feel like, okay, they Disney-fied the zoo experience, right?
But isn't it? It's a zoo with more space. It's like closer to a wild safari type park.
There is a reserve there, a preserve, where they have a ton of different animals, and there is a safari ride you can go on. But it's not like when you think of a safari ride, like driving off miles into a preserve and then sightseeing. The safari ride is basically a theme park ride where you get into a car, and the car does drive through the preserve, but it's predetermined sections, and they put the food close to where the tracks are, so the animals will get relatively close. You're guaranteed to see some of the animals. So it does feel a little bit more artificial, but the zoological experience is artificial. You're still seeing animals not in their natural habitats. So,
How else is the zoo experience Disneyfied?
well, the fact that it's on it's on a track. It's like they designed the course much
Yeah.
like they would.
You mean the safari version?
Right. Sorry for
But what else about the zoo?
So they actually have theme park rides. They have a Mount Everest section.
What?
Yeah, they have a Mount Everest ride, and they theme the whole area like Nepal with flags and shops.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to great length to say the Imagineers did go to Nepal, and they actually had tour guides give them direction on the artistic direction. They built some things there and then brought it back to the Animal Kingdom and reconstructed the buildings, but it was actually made over there. But it's like everything you'd find in Disneyland, like when they show parts of the world, like you're getting the Disney version of a world tour. Like people don't go there to say I went to China and I went to Paris. It's not quite like going to Las Vegas where you say there's Paris, Las Vegas, but it's a version of that, right? Like it's theming. You're getting the spirit and some of the gestalt of what that country or that culture has to offer, but through the Disneyland, it's still through amusement, right? It's like the video game version of that. What else was that? Animal Kingdom. They had a whole dinosaur park. So do you remember Disney had that movie Dinosaur?
Yeah.
It was a CG movie with CG characters in front of live action backgrounds. And so when that movie came out, and this I think was like pre-Pixar even, when they pre-merger, they have a whole section of the Animal Kingdom was dedicated to dinosaurs, and they have a dinosaur ride. I know it's not the zoo. It's not the zoo experience. It's not San Diego Zoo, which itself is like a Disney-sized park. So but there are I see they have tigers. You walk through. I think they did a good job merging the zoo experience with the educational part of a zoo experience with the entertainment part of a Disney park experience. One thing that I thought was really interesting and fascinating from a theming and construction standpoint is in the Animal Kingdom, they have a mini park in the park, and the mini park is themed to be like a touring carnival. Like a carnival that gets set up
Sure.
in a parking lot, right, where they put rides, carousel rides, and games of chance, and mini roller coasters, and it's themed to the extent where even the parking lot that this park resides on is fake. And has fake cracks, and they built a fake parking lot to put the carnival rides on.
Well, did they just use typical carnival rides?
No, they're more better integrated. Okay. But everything is fake. Like none of it's made to be able to move, move from town to town. But it looks like they deployed it.
It's weird.
Yeah, okay. So that's how how far they go with the theming. It's like I'm walking through a park and suddenly, oh look, the circus is in town.
Yeah,
the local carnival's in town. Let's ride these rides.
It's Americana.
Yeah.
Dinosaur came out in 2000.
2000. So that was
after.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay. It wasn't very good.
How about Epcot?
Yeah. So I'm saving that for last. So Epcot was my favorite, and Epcot, I think I was both disappointed and also really surprised by Epcot. I never understood the fact that Epcot was a theme park. I always thought it was like a conceptual, like one building, and it was when you think Epcot, you think that golf ball, the geodesic dome. right? And I
But
thought,
you have
like,
all those like lands around it, all the different countries.
and
Yeah.
that's the part I didn't completely know about at all. So Epcot stands for what is it? Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. I want to say.
I didn't even know it was an acronym.
Yeah. But the Epcot part of the community prototype community tomorrow part of the park doesn't feel like a community at all. It just feels like a really spaced out like set of attractions, but the attractions themselves were fantastic. So that big sphere, the geodesic sphere, is a ride, and inside you ride through. They call it Spaceship Earth, but you ride through an animatronics show of the history of communication because it was previously sponsored, I think, by AT&T, but now it's sponsored by Siemens. And so you sit on the ride, you actually go inside the sphere, go around very slowly, and you have Judi Dench narrate the history of human communication from writing on papyrus to the Phoenicians who created the alphabet to all the way to a Wozniak type character building in the garage, which I loved. And then there's a ride that Ellen and Bill Nye did back in the 90s. And it was amazing because it was a both ride but also a show. So you would go in and you'd sit in this lobby and you'd have this giant 4-screen widescreen projected effect, like a movie that they filmed, and you would walk from screen to screen and tell this whole scripted story, and then you get on a ride and then it takes you through like energy generation.
How does the technology of this ride hold up?
So that's the thing that I really wanted to get into is the technology of the rides. Let me think about the best way to talk about this. There are a lot of different kinds of rides, right? When Disneyland was first created, the type of ride that kind of endures through Disney it's called the dark ride. And you think of a show like Pirates of the Caribbean or even Peter Pan, or even shows that are attractions that are like Universal Studios like E.T., those are dark rides in the sense that you have these buildings and they're all dark, they're specifically lit, and you have carriages and carts that go through and travel through on a conveyor belt from room to room to room. And those dark rides are the staple of Disney. They're different from roller coasters, which are like Thunder Mountain or the Matterhorn, roller coaster type rides. Space Mountain, and different from shows. So there are also shows which are like what would be considered a ride show, like the Terminator 2 show at Universal Studios, or Captain EO.
Yeah,
is like a show.
It's a movie.
Right. It's basically a movie, sometimes with live elements that come in, or
Yeah.
3D classes, or 4D effects. And Disney's really, I think they perfected the dark ride a long time ago. And the technologies that were in those dark rides, the animatronics, they hold up because they're physical, tangible objects. You have rides, and they hold up in a different way. Like, obviously, the people who rode the Carousel of Progress that Walt Disney worked on, that was unveiled in the 1964 World's Fair, those animatronics back then in the 60s, you probably were in all of them in a different way than I'm in all of them today. Like, I appreciate like the animation that goes into animatronics. Different attraction companies and different parks have moved on from the dark ride. So Harry Potter, the ride at Universal Studios, was probably the most technologically advanced ride I've ever ridden, and incredibly impressive. It combines the elements of a dark ride with a show and modern technology. And so
you're like interacting with like characters that are
no, it's still technically a dark ride, but what they did and it started with the Amazing Spider-Man ride, which debuted at Universal Studios in, I want to say, the early 90s.
I remember hearing about this ride. I've never seen it. I still haven't seen it, but people were saying this was a new leap forward in 3-dimensional ride experience.
Yeah, so if you talk about you think about like the most basic dark ride is Pirates of the Caribbean, right? You're sitting on a boat.
Yeah.
The boat rides along a track.
I'm gonna say it's a Small World is the most basic.
Yes, right, and it's a Small World has it, but they're variants of the same thing on a track, on a very very comfortable ride, right? And you're seeing shows from room to room.
Yeah,
you get that concept, right? the next step up for that is to incorporate maybe a little bit more. I guess Pirates of the Caribbean is a step up from that because it has a little bit more of a thrill. Because there are parts where you
Drop.
a little bit, right, and it's on water also. And then you go from there to the more thrilling rides, like the roller coaster ones. So like Big Thunder Mountain is a good example of that, where there are parts where they're showing you scenes, but then it really jumps into like a roller coaster type experience. And then there are shows like the 3D shows I talked about, like Terminator, where you put on 3D glasses and they play a movie, and then there's some interactive elements where people come on stage. So what Universal did with the Spider-Man ride, and I would say the peak of the dark ride is maybe the Indiana Jones, which people love. Have you ridden that Indiana Jones ride?
At Disneyland,
Where it has the roller coaster elements because it looks like you're in a car and there's great storytelling, but it really is effectively a dark ride. You're going from room to room, learning the story, and you have complex animatronics and effects like blowing of the darts that get you immersed. But you're on the track. Everyone gets that same experience, and there's only so much you can do within the physical confines of a roller coaster track and the space you have to build the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So what Spider-Man did, and Spider-Man was actually done by Imagineers who left Disney or maybe were let go after in the 80s and early 90s, is they started combining the screen effect, putting screens with dark rides. So Back to the Future is a good example of this. The
That was
Back to
my
the Future
favorite.
ride, which was basically, it's a motion simulator ride.
Do you
right?
ever ride that, Jeremy?
Where is it?
It
was
wasn't
at
Universal.
Universal Orlando. Like you
Mm-mm.
would be in a DeLorean, and there would be 3 DeLoreans side by side, and like you'd sort of like lift up, and you were all together, but it was really hard to see the other DeLoreans, and there was like kind of a dome IMAX dome above you.
Yeah.
That you'd be watching sort of a progression, and there was like a couple interactive elements.
So those are motion simulators.
Yeah.
Right? When you think of simulator rides, you think of you're in a cockpit, you're in some type of vehicle, and that vehicle is being motion controlled.
Star Tours.
Star Tours, exactly. But Star Tours, it's like each vessel, each ship is its own simulator. Back to the Future was different in that you had an array. You could put 6 cars on the same motion similar system, but they could all be sharing one giant IMAX screen, and that increases your field of view because you can look through. And if you really lean forward, you could see the other cars moving, but you're all share that same screen.
Yeah.
But it's more immersive because even with or without 3D glasses, you have a much larger screen surrounding you.
Yeah.
The Star Trek ride was similar to that in that they put screens above and to the side of you. So what Spider-Man did.
What
to go
did
back to that,
Spider-Man
I know,
do?
It combined both those things. It was a dark ride in a sense that you were on a car on a track, but you would see a scene, but this you'd go through the New York, right? It'd be being sent out from the Daily Bugle, and then you would transition from a practical set along the ride to a screen.
3D.
And the screen would be 3D because
Yeah.
you'd be wearing 3D glasses.
Okay.
And the innovation they did, if you think about logically why a 3D screen would not work along a ride, and that's because of parallax.
Yep.
The parallax effect.
I'm with you.
Like if I'm sitting in front of if you're watching Avatar, any 3D movie in a theater, you're not moving. You're sitting still. And even when you're on the Back to the Future ride, you're sitting relatively still. You're rotating, but there's no lateral movement, right? What happens when you incorporate lateral movement with a 3D screen? You get a weird parallax effect where the background shifts relative to the foreground, and it doesn't work.
Yep.
Right. So the invention that they work on, and Universal has a patent on this, is they invented a technique called squinching. And because the rides are still they're not user controlled, they're pre-designed, they knew the perspective of everyone on every seat in that ride. And so they calculated that and re-rendered their 3D projection effect to compensate for the lateral movements of the simulator.
Now I want to see this.
And so it looks like even though you're moving alongside the screen,
Yeah.
the 3D effect looks like it's stable and it's right there the whole time.
I like it.
But if you were able to watch it just not moving,
Then it would be shifting. You would see the background shifting left to right or right to left or up to down. But they did it so seamlessly, the combining of the practical sets, dark ride sets, with the simulator screen effects, that becomes effectively Star Tours, but you're going through practical sets and then being thrown off a building and then driving through a city, and the driving part it's just a 3D screen, and it feels completely believable.
But you're saying Harry Potter one-upped even this?
Yes. So the Spider-Man ride has won the I forget what the name of the award is, but there's awards for amusement park rides, and it's won Best Dark Ride 12 years in a row until 2010 when Harry Potter came out. And Harry Potter one-upped it, one by just lavishly building those practical sets to be even more lavish. You're not on the ground, you're suspended, and there's like whole buildings that you're actually flying through. But by the control system that your car is in. So the Spider-Man ride, your carriage is still on a track, and it moves along the track like a race car track, and it swivels, it turns, and it gives you like some little bit of thrust. And they do the same thing with the Transformers ride. Harry Potter, every car is on a robot arm with 6 degrees of freedom. Of movement.
Wow.
Robot arm. Think of like those.
Also on wheels?
No. The robot arm itself is on wheels.
That's what I mean. So
Yeah.
you are still moving along a track.
Yeah, the robot arm itself moves along the track, but then gives you 6 degrees of rotation
Jeez.
and lateral movement where it can move you close to a practical effect, pull you back when you move a screen. And when you move, the other innovation they did was that the screen, when it goes between simulator screen scenes and practical scenes, that screen is tied to each car. The screen itself also moves along with you. And so you never see the edges of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you know this before you got on the ride?
No.
So all this, you were shocked by it.
Shocked. I did it several times, read the Wikipedia pages while in line. Just how could they do this? This is mind-blowing.
Well, so this is at Universal, though. This
That's
was not
Universal.
at Disneyland. Right?
And that's-
or Disney World.
And so when people ask me, like, what was your favorite thing? Like, from a technological standpoint, yeah. Like, Universal, I think, has Disney beat.
Do you know if Universal California has that ride or not?
They do have the Harry Potter one,
Because I know they just opened the Harry Potter Land.
and they have that ride.
They do have that ride.
They do have that
Ah,
ride.
score.
I've heard disappointing things about the California version of Harry Potter Land, that it's smaller. And
So
it's just compacted.
Diagon Alley is only in Florida.
Yeah.
So, but Universal has the patent for that technology.
Yeah.
Right. Disney, I think they are really proud of their tradition of audio animatronics. They invented the audio animatronic, and they invented that type of perfected dark ride. What Disney is really embracing now is how do you create these animatronic performers, like from your Small World to your Jack Sparrows and Pirates of the Caribbean, but bring it to a modern age. And what they're doing now is projection mapping. And so from the Snow White ride or the Cars ride to now their new big one is Frozen, they have audio animatronics, like moving characters, but their faces are internally projected with pico projectors. So you get actual facial animation.
They've been doing that ever since Haunted Mansion, where they would take these recessed sculptures of faces and then project images onto them, and they would look like they were watching you because the way that the recession optical illusion happens.
Yeah. I think it's really effective, and it's really it brings to life animated characters in a really impressive way. And I think it's really convincing.
Yeah.
I don't think it will stand to the test of time.
Why not?
The same way that a
Actual animatronics?
wholly physical animatronic will. And again,
I like the nostalgia of those old school
exactly.
animals.
I know that the way I'm appreciating the audio animatronics today are not the same way that someone in the 60s appreciated Lincoln. That to them was like the hugest invention ever. But I don't think going forward, 30 years from now, someone's going to appreciate the rear projection mapped Frozen character the same way that I'm appreciating Abe Lincoln audio animatronic.
I don't know. I kind of disagree with you on that one. I think that until it becomes fully holographic, we will still be at a point where people can look and appreciate actual animatronics and robotics. And if you're just kind of augmenting that with elements of projection mapping, I think
it's too much. I think it's too much augmenting because I don't think it's perfect. I think the contrast on the faces is a little. It's like you remember the movie AI.
Yeah.
How when they go to the Flesh Fair, right, where they go and Teddy, it's the place where the humans torture the robots and they pit them against each other, and it's like basically a monster truck rally.
Yeah.
And you have all these like history of old robots kind of like in prison, right? And some were look more human than others. And there was one that was like the TV screen face.
Right.
And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, for a generation, that makes sense. They thought that would work. And then they went back to more like this feels like, oh, the TV screen on the face
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
a little bit.
There's a great Wired article from all the way back in '99 that talks about the squinching technology, the origin of it, and how that made its way into Amazing Spider-Man. And there's a good Gizmodo article about the Harry Potter land, how that works,
Yeah.
including a diagram, Jeremy, if you'd like to see. There's a diagram of how the screen actually
I thought
is
that was
located.
5.1 headphones.
I'll put those links in the show notes for
I think-
people that are really interested.
Universal really went all out with their Harry Potter theming. And I think there's, again, two ways to think about it. One, for people who are hardcore Harry Potter fans, they're going to get this like $1 billion theme park that's made catered to them, where they get to see Hogwarts and they get to be in the world of Harry Potter and Diagon Alley and drink butterbeer, like built out as if it was the movie set and with surprise and delights everywhere. But in the same time, I think it lacks that evergreen timelessness that Tomorrowland and Frontierland and Adventureland have at Disneyland. And maybe it's unfortunate that Disney is really embracing its branded areas where, you know, you're going to have Star Wars Land. And yeah, I'm glad they're spending a ton of money building out a Star Wars Land. I know it's a direct response to Harry Potter Land, but I hope that doesn't take away from Tomorrowland.
I suspect you could fill the rest of this podcast talking about your trip.
I could.
Just a couple quick hitter questions.
Yes.
Are you a Ravenclaw, like I suspect?
You know, that's what Danica suspected as well. Turns out I'm Gryffindor. I was surprised
you're
too.
not.
I know. I read the description. I'm like, no, I'm Ravenclaw. But I answered the question.
That
and
sorting hat
it's
is
what the
broken.
hat gave me.
Hat
Then
is
we need to
broken.
resorted.
And Danica, who is she?
She's a Gryffindor. We were House United.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, that
Um,
seems appropriate.
The Universal ride for the new Harry Potter ride, like there are two Harry Potter areas between the two parks, because there's just like California Adventure and Disneyland. There's
I know, one for Muggles, one for Wizards.
well, they have one for Universal Studios and one for Islands of Adventure, whatever you call it. One's Hogsmeade and one's Diagon Alley. They are connected by a train, so you actually ride the train
At 9 3/4?
at 9 3/4. You go
Nice.
through the wall in a fake London subway system. The train between the two parks is itself an attraction, and the theming. I saw the best Pepper's Ghost I've ever seen. Like it looked like a holographic person standing in a practical set.
Wow.
Yeah.
John Cleese walking around as a ghost. Anything else you want to talk about before we dive into pop culture news?
Oh God, the Magic Band system. They spent $1 billion on that, and it totally works for at Disney. This is their RFID band system.
What?
So
Band?
yeah, you wear the band.
I thought you meant like a musical band.
Oh no.
All right,
The that's was
Yeah, no tickets anymore
convenience.
for anything.
yeah.
And they use that for the Fast Pass system.
They
right?
use for everything, for
Right.
food, fast pass, and it's.
Did you
brilliant.
like it?
Yeah,
God, the metrics they get off
I
that.
know. The whole time I'm like, they know when I left my hotel room. They know everything about you.
Yeah, they know traffic flow. They can zoom out and look at a bunch of people, so they can correct that in the future.
Fascinating. I think it's probably coming to Disneyland soon.
But I was really curious if you liked that experience of not having a wallet, essentially.
I did. Especially if drinking around the world. So the thing we did on the last day was the other part of Epcot is 11 countries around the world get represented in the other half of Epcot, and they all have restaurants and they all serve alcohol. So the traditional thing is to go from Canada all the way to Mexico, from one side to the other, and you get a drink at every country. And we got a drink at every country, and then you get your bill the next day. You're like, what? I spent this much? Yeah, you pay the Disney tax. Everything's like 20% more than normal. I'm gonna save my last bit of Disney for the VR minute, but remind me to talk about Circle Vision.
Okay.
You want to talk about this last point?
I didn't write this on here. What's this about a Warriors game?
Oh, I also intended a Warriors game. I just want to let you
Oh,
guys
versus
know.
the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, it was one of those perfect coincidences.
They
where
played there?
They played there while I was there, and during dinner, I'm like, "Oh, what's going on with the Warriors? They're playing the Magic.
That's great.
Magic. Wait a minute. That's Orlando. I'm there now. And so we watched the game.
Nice.
That is nice. And now I will unmute and play the next song.
All right, this is the deepest into the podcast this segment has
I'm
ever
so
been.
sorry.
No, it's fine, but we're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit. Though, one of the biggest pop culture news items of the year was revealed this week, the title for Episode 8.
Star Wars in red. The Last Jedi.
Is it The Last Jedi or Last Jedi plural?
Well, Jedi,
Jedi
is
it's plural.
I
singular
know, that's
or
what I'm
plural.
saying.
Yeah, so that's the good question. I think it needs to be it's singular because it wouldn't be last.
Oh.
So if you can think of it two ways. If it's the Last Jedi singular, then it's talking about they found the last person, and also and I believe in a crawl for the last movie they identify Luke as the Last Jedi.
This is true.
But if you think of the Last Jedi as plural, then it's really depressing because it means that Luke and whoever he teams up with, whether it's Rey and whoever, they are the Last Jedi. Like, unless there are Jedi we don't know about that Luke are in league with.
I have to come out and say I was disappointed at the title because it implies a Luke-centered movie. And I was always hoping that we'd just get new characters, and the majority of focus would be on new characters. Now, this is all, speculation on my part. But I want Rey to be the center, and Finn, and all of the new characters, and even some ones that we haven't met yet. And hearing from Rian Johnson and all the other people involved that this is a weird movie. Do you keep hearing that too?
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard it's a weird movie. I heard it's going to be great.
No, but like
Tonally, it's not going
to be a typical Star Wars movie.
I'm excited for that.
I'm really excited about that.
I mean, was The Empire a typical Star Wars movie?
At that time, no.
I guess when you only have one, there's
don't
no
know.
such thing as typical.
I mean, you know the Yoda quote, his dying words, "When gone am I, the last of the Jedi you will be." I think that's what this is a reference must
Yeah.
be to, right?
So basically, Star Wars, Luke Skywalker.
I'm down. What? I wanted Luke in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
We all knew Mark Hamill had dressed up, grown a beard. He was going to be in the first movie.
He lost all that weight.
We got 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm down. I'm fine. Bring it. Everyone's worried he's going to die, though. I mean, whatever. If he dies, I'm sure it'll be wonderful.
Here's what I hope. I hope that they don't actually make him the last Jedi in the series
Ever? No.
and introduce a new type of force-sensitive class of character.
Force-sensitive robot?
Ooh.
Yeah, force-sensitive
Thank you,
droids.
dude. Yeah, seriously, like
Droids.
We have some AI news coming up during the
Oh, sure.
Scientific Minute.
Now, you had something to reveal to Jeremy.
Oh, let's see if Jeremy knows this.
Okay.
Put the titles of 7 and 8 together.
Oh, okay. So we have The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi.
What about that? Think about that.
What are you saying?
That means Episode 9 is going to be from a nap. Star Wars Episode 9 from a nap.
Is that really the punchline of this whole thing?
I don't.
No, but the speculation is that all
Yeah.
the titles string together.
No.
The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. Something. You could finish that sentence a billion different ways.
A New Hope.
No, it doesn't work.
A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back.
But it would give new meaning to The Force Awakens.
Well, whatever. I'm excited. I think it's a great title. God, after all the prequel titles, everyone was like, "Oh, they'll do better next time."
Revenge of the Sith? Call back.
Phantom Menace. Nope.
Revenge of the Sith was a good name.
Nope.
No, I think the only bad ones are
Why?
Attack of the Clones.
No, because there were no clones in that movie, basically.
Yeah, there were.
And
They
also
didn't really do much
Attack-
attacking.
Yeah, exactly. That sounded more like a 50s, like a retro sci-fi movie. Attack of the 55th Clones.
I didn't care for him. I like The Last Jedi. It's great.
You and those controversial takes that you did not care for those
Ooh.
prequels.
All right.
Hot stuff. Can't handle it.
Sorry.
All right, we'll fire through the rest of the pop culture items. Netflix endlessly rebooting shows. And here's the one I put this on here because it left a question mark. They are rebooting Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
Yeah, what was it? That's cool.
Is that right? So I saw this and I was like, does this show need rebooting?
Oh, I liked this show because
I liked the show, but I
I
felt like it did its thing.
I'm the guy who needs help, and so I really honestly I would have loved to have had these guys help me out.
Well, what I didn't like was they're rebooting it. I mean, they had a good sort of notion is that they feel like there's a lot of division happening in this country, and they're going to reboot it and go to like Middle America to red states and reboot Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And I was like, that feels a little forced to me.
No, really?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. This is one of those where I feel like Netflix is really throwing around too much money. Like anything can be rebooted at this point.
Yeah.
Though, now that I just, dumped on Netflix a little bit, got to bring it back up because I just finished.
You finished it already?
I finished it. I got sick, and so I sat on my couch and binge stuff. I finished season 2 of Voltron, Legendary Defender.
All right. So I loved season 1, and I raved about it, and I felt like they brought back and even improved one of my favorite cartoons from when I was a kid. I loved the first season of Voltron, and I watched it with my 9-year-old, and we both loved it. So been looking forward to this. Haven't watched it yet. Don't ruin it for me.
I'm not going to say anything.
But you liked it.
It was a worthy successor to season 1.
Awesome.
And, very similar, like, left me wanting so much more at the end of season 2.
In a good way.
In a good way, yeah.
God, it was a long way.
Did you watch season 1 yet?
I didn't.
Ah!
Did you watch the original?
No. See, that's the thing. I
I'll
don't know if it's going to connect with me the
Yeah,
same
that's
way.
nostalgia for me.
Yeah. I got excited about the new Power Rangers trailer.
That said, you don't need to have watched the original.
Oh, okay.
It's actually better if you don't watch the original because the animation just doesn't hold up.
It's far better. All the characters are much more diverse in this. They have interesting characters.
Do you feel like it's a gateway into anime? Like
No.
robot anime, mecha anime?
I
It's
mean,
not so much about robots, honestly. I mean,
It's not.
They become Voltron, of course.
what I really like about
Spoiler.
it's like a serious show, but it has all of these elements of silliness and comedy.
Yeah. It's
embedded
self-referential
into
in some
it.
ways.
Yeah.
And is it a reboot show where they're reintroducing all the characters from
Yep.
scratch, or is it a callback show?
Yes, 100% reboot.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you, Siri. It's I think the same animation team that worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Got it.
which was a fantastic show.
Hey, Cora was on Stone Title last week.
Yeah, Cora and Becca from You're the Worst.
Becca, I didn't make that connection until reviewing the episode. I'm like,
I've known Janet for a while just because
That's
she runs
Becca.
a festival in town. And,
yeah, Sketchfest.
And we met a long time ago. But just, wow. And have you seen Stand Against Evil?
I
That's
have
actually a
not.
pretty fun show,
I
too.
wanna watch that.
She's a lot of fun, characters on different shows. And if anyone out there is a fan of Burning Love, a short-lived Yahoo online series, Janet had an exceptional character on that show.
Oscar nominations, they're in, and
Are-
I just realized I haven't seen a single Best Movie.
No,
nominee.
that can't
Wait,
be
wait,
true.
let's name them. How many are there? How many Best Picture nominations are
9.
there? 9. Let's go through one at a time.
Do you want to guess?
Okay, Arrival.
Yes, your favorite sci-fi film of the year.
La La Land. Probably
Yep.
going to win it.
Yep.
Hidden Figures.
Mm-hmm.
Silence.
No.
That's a Martin Scorsese movie.
You got 6 more. Fences, Hacksaw Ridge, Hell or High Water, Lion, Manchester,
By the Sea.
By the Sea,
Manchester.
and Moonlight.
Oh, okay.
I've seen only 3 of these.
I am behind.
I still haven't seen Arrival, which I think is and La La Land, which are probably the 2 on the list that I'm willing to see that I haven't seen. The other ones are hard movies. I mean, seeing Moonlight's a really difficult movie to watch. I think it's a great movie, especially the last half hour is fantastic. And Mahershala Ali is probably going to win Best Supporting Actor. Incredible turn as Remy Danton on House of Cards and in Punisher. Or
I
not,
thought you were going to say Hunger Games because he was in the Hunger Games last one.
I forgot about Hunger Games. Bay Area native too, from Oakland.
Oh.
So I'm excited. I guess there's no Oscar So White this year.
You meant
there's
Luke
a
Cage.
lot of.
Yeah.
You meant
diverse-
Luke Cage.
Luke Cage. Luke Cage is what I meant. Sorry.
What's also interesting is with that coincides with the release of the Oscar nominations is Andy Bio, who created XOXO, Delicious. He runs a shared Google Doc that he tracks leaked screeners and when the screeners for Oscar movies were leaked. It's just a fascinating social internet point for him.
What does that mean though?
Movies that have been nominated, typically those get more awareness online and those get leaked, the screeners get leaked and there's more demand in the pirating community. And while obviously we don't condone the pirating of movie content, the tracking of what content gets released is interesting because it's done by groups and individuals. And so he has this document that says, I think it's between 2003 he's been doing this. From 2003 to 2017.
Wouldn't these results just mirror box office sales?
Not necessarily.
No?
And he ranks them like when the screener was leaked. Was it leaked by Oscar night? Was it the DVD retail screener leaked? Was it high quality? Was it a cam leak? Was it what type of leak it was? And the dates that those screeners actually hit torrent sites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still don't understand the significance of this info.
I think it's tracking of a certain subculture of the internet.
Yeah. Okay, fine. But it doesn't indicate what's going to win.
No, not at all. No,
Right.
there's no correlation. It's just it's data points.
Is there anything you're hoping for out of the Oscars this year?
I'm hoping that La La Land doesn't win everything.
I don't think it's going to win Best Picture. I think they're going to deny it.
I think you're wrong.
I think Moonlight's going to win Best Picture.
We're not doing a pool. Should we do a pool?
Hollywood loves a good musical.
Sure. I'm hoping Kubo somehow surprises in animation, but I expect Zootopia to win. Also, worthy movie to win.
Moana's up too, but apparently Zootopia is far more popular.
Why did Zootopia and Moana both come out the same year?
Yeah.
Disney is killing it.
Yep.
Sorry, not a Disney shill, but Disney's killing it.
Yeah, there's no Finding Dory on this list.
What?
Yep.
Wow. I rewatched Kubo on the flight back.
Yeah. Does it hold up?
Well, it holds up as well as I thought it would.
Oh,
I liked it, but I didn't love it.
Oh, okay. I loved it. When I saw it, I thought
loved it.
This is one of my favorites. I got to watch it again.
I just thought it was the most original of
I would agree.
of those three.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's also a couple movies I've never heard of. My Life as a Zucchini and The Red Turtle. Might look into those
either.
For the parents out there.
I'm just hoping for a less activist Oscars than what we saw at the Golden Globes.
Oh,
will
in terms
say.
of speeches?
Yeah, I'm hoping Jimmy Kimmel keeps it like light and airy. I feel
Well,
like
you know if
that's-
it's Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel, not Fallon.
No, yeah, it's Kimmel.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
there'll probably be some biting sarcasm in there.
Got it. All right. Well, let's move on to some real tech news. All right. So, what's been happening this week in technology? The week I was out. Tell me of the things.
Well, Norm, do you have an Amazon Echo?
I do.
You can now live the dream of accessing its AI intelligence by calling on it by the name computer.
I heard about this.
The Star Trek dream of accessing the world's information.
Now, my question is, was this a technical challenge for them to implement, or was it arbitrary? And if it was arbitrary, why did it take so long?
Yeah,
So,
good question.
so obviously Amazon, I'm sorry, I'm going to say the words because it's Amazon, Echo, and Alexa. Those three words were the ones that were able to activate the device since its launch. It's been out for 2 years now.
Initially, they added
Echo, right?
Echo later.
That's right, which is the name of the product. Again, also weird because the technology, the service is its name, Alexa, and then the product is Echo.
Yeah.
Now, were those chosen because of those were the sounds linguistically? It was easier to recognize those and pick those out, and the word computer was less so because it's softer tones and maybe it's not as sharp. Was that the problem, or was it just arbitrary because they wanted to get the things most affiliated with the brand out first and lock in the user base?
Why not allow people to come up with their own word? You might as well, as long as it's something that it can learn.
Right.
It feels arbitrary to me.
It does to me as well. And something else I've been impressed by is they've been running a lot of TV ads. And those Alexa TV ads, those are programmed in absolutely to not register with the device.
They still do.
I've
From
never
time
had
to-
it register when the TV ads.
Mine is. I mean, Google's are the worst. The Google Home ads absolutely register.
Ah.
And
I
like
thought
they
that
will
waveform, Amazon
oh.
would lock that waveform with the ad to
Yeah.
know that in that sequence
Blacklist
it would
it.
never, it would blacklist that version of the activation word.
Well,
Did you switch over to computer?
I can tell you I did try it because unlike you, I like Star Trek, but I like it enough in order to give this a shot. And it, first of all, I ended up within the first couple hours with one false activation just by watching YouTube. Somebody said the word computer, and I realized that's going to happen quite frequently in
Yeah.
my office. And two, I kept calling it. I was like referring to it as the normal name, and I would forget that I changed it over, so I just changed it back.
Did you like?
If it
Having-
sounded like the Star Trek computer,
So
that would
they
change.
got made-
That would change everything.
you mean if they got Majel
yeah.
Roddenberry?
Bear.
or not,
By the
Bear
way,
Roddenberry.
I heard that she recorded every phoneme
Yeah.
in the English language.
I don't
before
know
she
if that's
died.
apocryphal because I know for the last when they did a recording session with her for Star Trek 2009, it was already laborious. They had to visit her. Like she couldn't go to the studio. They went to her house
Right.
and did those specific phrases. Because when Spock enters the ship, it says "Hello, Commander Spock"
Yeah.
or Ambassador Spock. So I don't know if they could have done all the phonemes. That's a intensive recording session.
No doubt eventually we'll get to the point where you can feed a computer X hours of recordings of any voice and it will just
Well, that's what they
learn
did
how
with
to do it.
Roger Ebert. That was technology before he passed away. He worked with a tech company that because his voice loss, his whole
Yeah.
bottom out, that operation was quite sudden. So he didn't have the chance to record the phonemes. So his artificial voice was generated by all the hours and hours of recording that he had done for his TV show.
Using machine learning, or did people tweak it?
That's less certain. I think there must have been some machine learning there because I don't think it was a manual process. But that's something that was done obviously quite some time ago now.
Yeah.
At least 5 years ago now. So it must be better. We can do better.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I'm off the page here.
VPNs in China are now illegal.
This is not shocking.
No.
I mean they've cracked down on VPNs before.
But it's been a loophole that the government has been they haven't been terribly strict about. You know, there's a lot of people who live over there that have used them to access other services throughout the world.
like YouTube and Twitter and other restricted sites.
And now in order to run a VPN, you have to have official government sanctions.
I did read that the articulation is still pretty vague.
Yeah.
And I think it's vague so they can have a lot of leeway to block VPN-like workarounds in the future, too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was just a matter of time. It'll be interesting to see how companies are affected by this, multinational companies that would rely on this to interconnect their own company networks. I guess the government doesn't have to be, they don't have to be fair. They could let whoever they want,
That is a good question.
use VPNs.
How that's going to work for big companies. It's sad on some level, but just really expected.
Booster board battery packs are finally shipping to the version 2s.
Oh.
It's good news, man. Because for a while there wasn't a whole lot of communication coming out on, when they were hoping to get these shipped.
And
But
these are only version 2s.
Version 1 was never affected.
Got it.
But the version 2 board, they sent out a few early shipments, and a couple of the batteries started leaking.
And
It's
so
a
there were
lot of concern.
They
extra
halted.
cautious to
Yeah.
recall those.
They did. In retrospect, they did very well. I mean, the CEO flew out to New York as soon as you heard about one instance, gave the guy a replacement, took it back, and they did a lot of good research, and I guess they solved the problem. So now the version 2 battery packs are shipping, and they're back on the road.
Did you I think you put this one in there, the screensaver, the art of the screensaver.
Well, yeah, this is weird.
I love this. This is the return of the flying toaster.
It's a great header, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean,
So what this is, there's a gallery show coming up featuring the art of the screensaver, featuring, I think, 27 different old school screensavers?
yeah. Where is it? It's in
Yeah.
in Europe somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Netherlands.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So somebody who appreciates the lost art of the screensaver And
No.
they've compiled a lot of them, and you'll be able to go and reminisce and look at your old screensavers.
Let's, off the top of our head, without reading the entire article, let's talk about the ones that really...
Oh, I
like,
have them up on my screen.
because
so
the screensaver, it's almost like the chime, the launch chime. It kind of identifies the era of computing you grew
Yeah.
up with. And maybe that's less so for people now, where their first computers are their phones or tablets. But when when we were installing new OSs every 2 years or 3 years, we would get these new features, built-in features, such as startup chimes and screensavers. On the PC side, you had pipes, 3D pipes. That was OpenGL.
that's on here.
You had the maze, which is like Wolfenstein 3D style, the brick wall maze.
Yeah.
I don't see that one yet. Is
That
it
was
there?
one of my favorites. There was definitely the star field.
Windows nobody really did great screensavers by default. Mac had okay ones.
What did Mac have?
Well, Mac had the more beautiful wavy lines, like they had like kaleidoscopic ones, or they had these blurry wavy lines that would move back and forth. To be clear, it was a good idea to run screensavers at one time, because when you're running on a CRT monitor, if you leave an image on the screen, it would stay there even when the screen was turned off.
Burnin'.
Yeah. So once we came to LCD technology, that became less an issue. Nowadays, they're engineered from the ground up to never really have burn-in anymore. So that's why it's certainly a lost art.
Do you remember the aquarium one? Where
Oh,
all the fish would
yeah.
come in from different sides? I
Yeah.
love that one.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm a little sad that screensavers never merged with like the demo scene.
Well, this guy he talks about screensavers in the same kind of, I don't know, the same way that I talk about the demo scene, which is
That they're
with a
an
lot
art.
of reference, where it's this mix of left and right brained creativity, which I find really, really exciting. But screensavers rarely reach that same level of effort as the demo scene would, and so I'm curious to see if this guy's even heard of the demo scene, what his opinion of it is. I think that the demo scene would be a much more interesting exhibit,
Because there's way more examples. I mean, every year competitions,
Right.
and in terms of landmarks.
thousands and thousands, and much higher caliber examples.
And the demo scene
and
really tracks computing, and it better demonstrates, like with screensavers, you have OpenGL and
Yeah.
DirectX as examples that help you launch different types of screensavers. Demo scenes, those different types of coding and different hardware architectures that allowed certain things.
He talks about screensavers as representing the language of what computers were capable of in a certain era, and that's just what demos do for me too. In
This
the
site
same way that games do.
This site is amazing. And
The site is really good.
the site is incredible. It has interviews with the artists that made these. I just rediscovered the Mystery House that would like light up different elements of the house. Do you
I
remember
never
these?
saw that one.
Oh my god, that was one of my favorites.
There was a great site called Really Slick Screensavers back in the day, and this I think it was a girl. She made the most amazing screensavers. I tried to hire her when we were at PC Gamer to do an official PC Gamer screensaver, but she was too expensive.
Wow.
I don't see her stuff represented here.
What were your favorite custom screensavers that you downloaded on the PC? I'm asking people out there as well as people in this room right now. I want to know. Like, I definitely had an LCARS Star Trek Next Generation one.
That would look good.
But I would love to know. And they were one type of file. So in that sense, it was very much like a demo scene, in that it was one file,
.scr.
and you just double click it, and it would launch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to see that list from all the listeners.
All right. Some tech updates, product updates. Finally, this is a legit finally. We got the first update to Google Voice.
Yeah, and it's really just an update to the visual interface for Google Voice, which looked like it was from the early 2000s pretty much for the last 10 years. It's had that same interface, and it is a much more slick interface, consistent with how Gmail and other messaging apps look now. Looks great. It's a good overhaul. Necessary overhaul?
I mean, Google Voice, exists both as an app and a service.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
you
it's
could-
visual voicemail for Android users, basically.
But you could also use Google Voice, the phone number system,
Mhm.
and not use the app. Like I use Google Voice for my work phone number, and it does great at transcribing. That service, I think, is the more important thing. And yeah, this seems like a minor update. It's not going away.
It's not going away. That's really what I was, the key of seeing that visual update is a signal to me. One quick thing before we go to the world of artificial intelligence. We got Mobile World Congress is coming up soon, and we're getting a couple leaks from it. And the one that caught my eye was the leak of the LG G6,
Mm-hmm.
which looks like, it's more rounded, iPhone-esque type phone, very slim bezel on it. I think it's a nice update. We're going to see if we get some Android Wear 2.0 devices out of LG as well, which I'm really excited about seeing. But I think the phone looks pretty slick from the leaked photos.
That leak photo shows not only minimal bezel left and right, but on top. So really trying to get rid of that forehead and chin, maybe the fad this year, minimizing the forehead and chin. You got a place for the speaker and for the camera, front-facing camera, and for your light sensor, but minimizing that as much as possible. It looks a lot like an iPhone on the side.
Yep. All right, let's go to the land of AI.
All right. The big conceptual technology news this week. We're always tracking the achievements, the milestones in artificial intelligence, from their ability to beat human players in Go to learning how they would learn games like StarCraft. And one game that's currently being played right now by AI against top human players is Texas Hold'em.
Yeah,
That's
there's an actual competition at the Rivers Casino in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, called Brains versus Artificial Intelligence.
It's a 20-day competition. This is not like they're sitting around in an afternoon with a PC.
They're playing 120,000 hands of.
Ooh.
Is that me?
That's you.
It must be you.
That's you. Close that window. So we're going to get long and short of it is that the AI is winning. But you got to
trouncing.
It's trouncing. It's taking the virtual money from the human players, but you got to take it with a grain of salt, because every time we talk about how an AI is being developed, whether it's for Jeopardy or for Go or for StarCraft, to play against humans, you have to think about the context of how these games are actually played in real life, and whether it's the intellectual aspect, the mechanics that it's actually defeating, or the actual interaction aspects. With Jeopardy, even though Watson was tapped into petabytes of data and could see through that and can process language, a lot of the reason that Watson won in Jeopardy was its ability to hit the answer question faster than Ken Jennings and the other competitors did. It won in the interaction level. Now, some people might say that's unfair, that humans, what they lost wasn't its ability. Humans didn't lose in our ability to retain knowledge as well as Watson or process language, but our ability to read or listen to Trebek's cadence and hit the button as soon as he finished the sentence.
Yeah, that's not what's going on here, though.
Here, you don't have a robot avatar. You don't have the robot's human avatar playing its cards, right? You have computer screens. If you look at the photo here on the story on Gizmodo, it's humans playing together, first of all. They're cooperating, the human players, against the AI, and they are playing with computer screens in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the real Texas Hold'em experience that the AI is winning at. But it is a lot of but it is the computer with imperfect information beating the humans in a game about imperfect information.
Are you either of you poker players?
No, not really.
Okay,
I've played.
Okay, this is Heads Up, No Limit Texas Hold'em.
Yep.
Which is, according to the article, like the holy grail of AI when it comes to poker. That they solved regular Texas Hold'em years ago.
Limit.
Yeah, right, limit. But this is a harder challenge because there's more unknowns.
And Heads Up is 1v1.
Okay, is that what I didn't know
Correct.
that? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And right now, the computer who is playing 4 humans, beating them all. It's up by $1 million total. Currently, they still have. They're playing this all the way through the 30th of January, and there is a Twitch stream that you can watch of the competition ongoing.
Wow. So the computer isn't reading any. What is the input for the computer? Is it time delay? Is it time to play a hand? Is it like there are all these factors in Texas Hold'em that contribute to how you play, not just the cards that you see and the cards that you have.
Well, there's a huge psychological element,
Exactly.
which is why this is, particularly either terrifying or interesting.
But there's also like a fatigue element, right?
Well, sure that people would experience that a
Yeah.
computer wouldn't. I don't think that's as much a factor. These guys love playing poker. They probably could play poker for 48 hours straight. That if they could, if they had to. These guys are the best in the world.
And a lot of what they do when they're playing is automated. Like they have their patterns, they're running. It's almost subconscious because they've played so many hands. What they do and what they're doing. But here they're reading nothing. They have nothing to read. No player to read in the sense of
Tells.
Of tells, and they have no tells to give. The only tells they have
Right.
to give are their hands and the bet amounts,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
But it has a perfect memory of all the hands you played. So as you go along, it's probably going to get a lot better against the same opponent.
if you play based on the same pattern. But the interesting thing about the article is that apparently the machine is learning throughout this competition. It's not. It's improving. So the humans are finding weaknesses as they're playing in the tournament, and the weaknesses of the machine, and they're finding that the machine is compensating the next day.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Now the article does make the point though that while the AI is exceptional, turning out to be exceptional at this game, just as AlphaGo is exceptional at Go, what we don't have yet is a generalized artificial intelligence. So as terrifying as this might be, that this is not going to be able to drive a car. It can't make coffee. It can't do anything else. It probably can't outsmart you at an Atari 2600 game. So this is like it's interesting new frontiers, but we're still quite a ways off from a generalized intelligence. Although they do think that this is one of that this leads to in the right direction, because this is introducing this need for compensating for unknown information and the psychological element of are you bluffing and I'm going to try to bluff you. These are new areas for AI.
Cue the Hollywood film where someone puts on augmented reality goggles and taps into an AI to earn a bunch of money in Vegas at poker.
I mean, I want to understand the stock market implications of AI, and when AI can manage and bet on the stock market far faster and superior to any people.
I think we've done that. I think we've passed that point
I
already.
imagine that's already happening, but is that available to me? Can I have an AI of my own that I tweak to my specifications?
No, I think that's the risk reward, where the investment is in the data lines and the computation, and the cost for that allows you to get minimal gain that over time makes up for that cost. All right. Before we move on to our next segment, I want to thank the sponsor of this week's episode of This Is Only a Test, and that's Crizal No Glare lenses. If you wear glasses, then you know that fingerprints, smudges, scratches, and glares can obstruct your vision and be a huge distraction. That's why you might want Crizal No Glare lenses. They give you the clearest vision possible by offering resistance to glares, scratches, and smudges. It means no more fingerprints from taking your glasses on and off, or scratches from cleaning your lenses on your shirt. And better yet, no more blinding glare created by your digital devices. So you can see everything on your screen, even if you're working at night. Crizal lenses stay clear and reduce distracting glare, so your friends and family can actually see your eyes, not your glasses, and you can look better, feel better, and be prepared for whatever comes your way with clear vision. Go to crizal.com, that's CRIZAL.com, and start living life in the clear. Thank them for sponsoring this week's podcast. And now on to some pinball.
I'm a pinball nerd. Pin. Just the right point. Finally, pinball. That makes me very happy.
I wasn't prepared to talk about pinball news, but I can. If you were Stern Pinball,
Yeah.
and you could hire anyone in the world to be a pinball designer, what would those qualifications be?
You're talking about designing the aesthetics of a cabinet or the
No,
gameplay?
the layout,
The layout.
the flow, the ramps, the lanes, where the slingshots are, how far apart the flippers are.
Yeah. One of the qualifications is someone who loves and understands and plays pinball a lot.
Ah, that's a very good answer, because they have just announced a hiring of the world's #1 pinball player to be their latest designer,
Okay.
Keith Elwin.
Wow.
He is far and away, everyone agrees, he's probably the best player in the world, has been for decades. And he's going to start there in March.
So my question is that not a good thing for casual players? Because would that person want to design, and Keith absolutely has the best incredible understanding of pinball and the physics and gameplay. but is he going to want to push for designs that are best suited for competitive play
Yeah.
and less so for fun play?
That is a concern. They actually already employ a programmer who is a very highly ranked pinball player, and you know what? They don't employ him. They do. They employ somebody like that. His name is Lyman, but another pinball company employs a very highly ranked competitive pinball player, and his rule sets are typically just too deep for regular players. You never see half the stuff that's in the game because he's so good.
He's making it for himself.
He makes it basically like he lacks perspective. So you're right. I wonder if Keith will make a game that's accessible to everyone and yet deep enough for the professional players to dig.
Here's your buddy cop movie. Pair him with a kid.
I like it.
Now it's time for a moment of science. All right, fair warning. If you don't like politics talk, it's probably a good time to opt out for a few minutes. Because in the world of science, the big story this week has to do with orders from the Trump administration that have, from many scientists' perspectives and from many journalists' perspectives, have gagged certain federal agencies from speaking to the press and releasing their work without permission first. It's important to note this was most directed at the USDA, which has since rescinded the order due to public pressure. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and a few other smaller agencies, including maybe not a smaller agency, but the Department of Energy as well. There are some indications this is happening at the CDC. From the administration side, or for somebody that's looking for, potentially what could be happening here, is this is a short-term sort of limitation that's meant for a couple weeks while they sort of figure out how they want to centralize communications. I have a hard time really buying that. The idea that they're going to have a new system for approving all press releases and limiting social media, and limiting a new process to approve any requests for press to talk to scientists is deeply concerning.
Big brother.
To me, how do you feel about it? I'm really inside this. Working in a university, I work with scientists all the time. Just external, not in the industry. When you heard about this, what were your thoughts?
It feels very Orwellian to me. I feel very upset about it, and I'm glad that you're going to do something about it.
Yeah. The most concerning one was the EPA one.
Yeah.
Now, this is very expected, and it's that the AP reported last night that the EPA is going to have to submit any scientific manuscripts to the administration for review before publication.
Well,
That is a massive problem if true. Now, AP reporting has been solid in years past, so I have no reason to doubt the validity of the story. I think they've confirmed it. That is deeply troubling.
Well, there you go. Doubting the validity. That's the concern. When you have, when you're politicizing things that are objective, and whether or not you're releasing fake data or changing the subjective things, like the benchmarks for toxic water, or for example, that's where you have fears.
It attacks a fundamental piece of what science is attacking the distribution and publishing of the data and experiments that move science forward.
Absolutely. But wasn't the first order given to the EPA to remove the climate change portion of the website?
Yeah, the whole website stuff, like how climate change came down off the White House website and how they're reviewing, quote unquote, different elements of the EPA website. I feel like, on one side, I'm not surprised given the stances on climate change, but they've also only been in office since Friday. I think it's fine to give them a little time to say where is the website's going to end up. This is but the mandate to the EPA to review literature before it's published.
Yeah.
That's a violation to me. It is a real massive violation against the integrity of science.
Well, especially if there's no transparency about what's removed and what's changed since that review.
Yeah, we have no oversight. We don't know who would be doing this review at this point. President Obama, during his time, ordered all the federal agencies to enact integrity guidelines around their scientific work. Almost all of those have been circumvented in the first few months. There was notions of this at the NIH, but we haven't really heard much more about that. The NSF, we haven't heard anything about. The National Science Foundation. I don't know what to say. Like, I've talked to a couple friends off the record who work at government scientific agencies, and while I was expecting them to be angry, most of them were just confused. Like, they just don't know what's happening right now.
Yeah, I don't suppose this is a part of their world.
No. Also, CDC was forced to cancel a conference on that relates on health and climate change that was scheduled for February. The conferences, the attacks on publication, those are really big deals to me. Like, I can't yield to that because it attacks the core of what science is. I mean, it's one thing to say that this new administration is going to cut funding to science. That's a congressional decision. That's a, executive branch decision on budget planning. It's another thing to attack the integrity of the process.
Yeah. Well, this is a president that understands message and media and public manipulation better than maybe any president has. And
Or have the people,
so
or and takes advantage of it.
that's what I mean. And unfortunately, he's taken advantage of it for the other side.
So I'm sighing a lot into the microphone. So if you're a scientist, what do you do now? Like, you're in this position now. What do you do?
Well, I mean, you resist, don't you?
So resist is definitely like a theme that has come up. You see a lot of anger. You saw what happened with the Badlands National Park Service Twitter account, which started tweeting out climate change results and then had those tweets deleted. So I
You had to whistle blow science.
there was a resist mentality. The most popular article on the Atlantic's website yesterday was an article that a friend of mine, Ed Yong, wrote about scientists running for public office.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an organization called 314.org, 314, that's pretty nerdy, whose whole emphasis is on preparing scientists to run for public office. And they've had 400 people register to be candidates through their program in the last few weeks. So I think you're going to see a big shift towards scientists running for public office. I'm not convinced that that is a fantastic course of action for all scientists, but I listened to a great webinar today from Rush Holt. He's the CEO of AAAS, which is the largest scientific society in the U.S. He's a former congressman from New Jersey, talking about what it's like to be a scientist serving in public office and how he really sees an opportunity for scientists to take public office and make much more, bring much more focus to evidence-based policy. So I wish them luck. I am involved with a group right now that's organizing a science march on DC and in satellite cities across the country. I'm both energized by this idea of having a march that's really focused on this attack, on something so fundamental to an area that has been a huge benefit to all Americans and all global citizens. There's a lot of economic track record that every dollar you invest in science leads back to $2 to the broader economy. And I'm also skeptical that a march is going to do anything, especially if you're somebody who doesn't have a job in science, has not seen your wages grow, and you're seeing a bunch of scientists potentially complain about a cut in their funding.
I mean, look, there's different things that it can accomplish. It might not affect any immediate change in policy, but there's a lot of people out there who watched the inauguration and felt one way, and then a day later felt completely the opposite because they saw a bunch of people marching. And so I think that you could affect you could encourage a lot of people, you could fuel a lot of people.
I think it has to navigate this fine line where it has to be a march for science. It can't be a scientist march. I think it has to be broader than that, where all the advocates come out. There's already been a number of celebrities that have lent their name to it. I will be really interested to see what the scientific societies, like all the groups, the universities, all of them that have to walk this really fine line, where they're public institutions, but their constituency, the scientists, want to go out and do this. What is that going to look like? This is going to be gnarly over the next few months. This is only going to get a nastier fight, especially if if this continues with the EPA into other federal agencies. I think the CDC, the EPA, and the Department of Energy are going to bear the weight of this.
And I think science is a naturally uphill battle because the pursuit of science is not naturally glamorous. And it's the search for truth, and it's oftentimes time-consuming, laborious, and the things that come out of it can be glamorous, but that's not, the things that come out of it aren't science. It's the process. And you can't, it's not as tangible an idea as other things that you can march and protest for.
I mean, if you look at this from a pure business perspective, a lot of the research that the federal government funds here in the U.S., the private sector will not fund. It's too risky, but they use that research to build into actual products for the private sector. The pharmaceutical industry depends on university research in biology and chemistry and biochemistry in order to actually develop new drugs and treatments. This is that apparatus is not going to go away. Congress can't do that. There's too many jobs at stake. I can see a reduction in it happening, but I think the attack on the publication and their ability to communicate, especially to the press, I have a hard time seeing them be able to execute that.
And that shouldn't be a partisan issue either.
No. Canada went through something similar. Stephen Harper, when he was prime minister a few years ago, instituted a gag order on Canadian-funded scientists. There's a lot to learn about from what happened during that interim time period, how the press handled that in terms of their communication with scientists. And I think there's some interesting reads that I'm going to put in the show notes around that issue. This is this surprised me. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Maybe I'm naive, but the review of scientific publications really caught me off guard and angered me in a way that I haven't been about a science issue in a long time.
I always feel like there should be protections in place for this kind of thing, but it's almost as if these institutions were developed without the assumption that somebody like this might make these kind of
Well, the Obama administration did try to put in some integrity clauses to protect this, but they were easily circumvented because of how they were enacted. There's some legal rules. Maggie Kurth Baker from 538, she's a science reporter there, wrote an article about how it was how these protections were circumvented so quickly. All right. I'm going to pause. I actually really tried to tone everything down there because I would have put some expletives in normally because this is really just fucked up. And I'll just leave it there. I have a couple short science stories. I'm going to start with Norm's favorite. Let's talk about some new spacesuits.
New spacesuits. Now, Boeing just revealed that for their Starliner ship, which is the craft that's going to ferry U.S. astronauts to the ISS starting, I believe, next year, right? 2018, we're no longer going to rely on Soyuz, although with this administration, maybe more on Soyuz. They designed, along with David Clark Company, these new spacesuits that the astronauts will be wearing. And these are not EMUs like the Apollo 11s, Apollo suits that you would see that were worn on the moon. These are to wear for the trip up and the trip down, almost like a redundant security system in case anything happens. But they are significantly, there are a lot of significantly new technologies in these, from basic things like touchscreen fingertips on the gloves that are needed to work on the controls, to a zippered helmet system that's a part of the suit itself. But the aesthetics are the most literally eye-catching things about these spacesuits. And a lot of people have pointed to possibly the Lego spaceman as being inspiration, I think.
It is that color blue, huh?
It is that color blue. It looks very much like Lego spaceman.
I thought they were very beautiful to look at. I was struck by the amount of weight loss they were able to achieve in the suit, and then also that they don't have to have an integrated cooling system in it. Like, it's comfortable enough in its current architecture that they didn't have to have like a really hyper specialized cooling system like they do for some of the larger suits. Now, this isn't for walking around in space.
Yeah,
This
it's not
is
for
really-
spacewalks. Yeah.
This is all just for, the travel in that new what's it called? The Z1?
Starliner.
Oh, Starliner. Yeah. It looks snazzy.
Yeah.
I like
It's
it.
all based off of the impressions of their flight engineer, though. We haven't had like official third-party utilization of this suit yet.
Is this
so-
like a 1-bit simplified version of the NASA logo?
No, that's a
What is it?
Starliner logo.
Oh, okay.
No, we don't. No new NASA logos.
No,
Yeah,
no.
That would be a big deal.
That has to go through a whole approval process
I
within
bet.
the administration.
Branding process. You get a whole art guidebook to come along with that.
Or we can just start a Kickstarter,
Yeah,
revive a logo.
that's right. What else, Kishore?
A little inside baseball one, but I thought this one was really interesting. The Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates, fund a number of big scientific projects, mostly around global health. They've been at the forefront of delivering vaccines into third world areas, fighting against malaria, against polio. They have a policy as a foundation. Anything they fund has to be published in an open access or open data journal. And so there are a number of private journals that don't conform to the Gates policy of open access, meaning like any of us could access the publications from their work at any time freely on the internet. And this clash is getting more significant now. So the Gates Foundation, probably the most influential foundation in the world at this point, is clashing with journals like Nature and Science. These are the two premier scientific journals in the world as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this is handled. A number of, I think Nature and Science are being very careful about how they're wording about this. It's very legal discussions here. But I think the Gates Foundation is really flexing a lot of muscle, saying like, hey, these are worthy scientific studies to be included in you, but we're going to go somewhere else and undermine your business model if you're not going to publish them. I think it's really fascinating. It's a little bit inside baseball fight for science, but it's sort of fascinating what the Gates Foundation is doing with that money. And lastly, this one's the weird one. Scientists have filmed light again. I talked about this before, where MIT Media Lab developed a trillion FPS like camera where they're able to essentially stitch together images of light going through a medium using multiple cameras taking images trillionths of a second apart. And now a new group did this as well, with light going through essentially like a fog, and seeing if light, just like how an item goes through air and can create a sonic boom if it goes fast enough, does light actually create that effect too? And it does. It's called the the photonic Mach cone.
Is that the little popping I hear all the time?
No, it's light. It doesn't make sound.
That's right.
Wait a minute now. Is this like a wake or is this like a sonic boom?
This is like it's closer to a sonic boom because a wake kind of like ripples out the out the back. This is a little bit different.
So, but light only travels at one speed. A sonic boom happens, I suppose.
It travels at different speeds in different mediums. So this is traveling like the actual experiment had a light sandwiched between two plates, and there was a medium in it, this fog. And so as it traversed that, it actually created this sort of cone-like shape as it was going through it.
And does it have to travel at a specific speed, velocity, in order to create a sonic boom, so to speak?
Well, I mean, it's traveling, it's traveling close to the speed of light,
Okay.
regardless of the media.
You understand, so the
I
sonic
get it.
boom happens at the speed of sound,
Mhm.
and then nothing beyond that. There's a threshold.
Yes, so this is still happening basically at the speed of light.
Interesting. And so it's constant.
Yes, but they were able to film this at real time, so you can see this
Yeah.
cone created. They have a video of it.
It's wicked. And so is this like a pulse of light?
Yes, this is a laser pulse.
Like a 10 millimeter, 5 millimeter.
5 millimeters the distance
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it
It
covers.
looks maybe like 10 millimeters
It's
long.
a 7 picosecond laser pulse, I believe.
That's really short.
That is pretty short.
That's really neat.
So I'll put a link up to the video. I just thought that was one of the more fascinating science discoveries. And hopefully, as long as this wasn't a government agency, we'll be able to see publications like this in the future. Oh, that's right. Shade at the end. Still unhappy about this.
Somehow, I think you just probably brought up the most important topic of the whole podcast, but we're going to move on to some mundane shit.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
Did you guys see Dear Angelica?
I did not get a chance to watch it. I only got back late last night.
I actually haven't been able to put on the headset since I've been sick. I got a minor sinus infection along with this, and I haven't been able to.
It's uncomfortable?
Wear the Rift. Nope. Yeah, I get I'm nauseous just really quickly.
Oh, motion sick.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Dear Angelica is a must-watch. It's the new Oculus studio. Is it what do they call it?
Story Studio.
Story Studio.
Yep.
The internal Oculus, the team, and they've done Henry and that was the first one, right? They've done a couple of these.
Lost.
Well, I guess that was early on. Yeah. And they're short films. This is a completely different direction for them because it's not your typical Pixar-like 3D generated world.
It was created using
Quill.
Quill.
It looks like it.
And there is in the Quill application and Dear Angelica, and has been, the environment that they created out of it.
Well, you wait till you see it because it is beyond a static environment. It's beautiful. It is the most unique thing I've ever seen in VR, and it gets into that demo scene kind of territory where you're just like, wow, this is really, really interesting and novel. So I would check it out. It's voiceover. It's got some interesting work done there, and the transitions and the animations are very tastefully done. It's one of these experiences it gets into that, okay, this needs to be in VR kind of experience rather than you could imagine maybe just watching it on a two-dimensional screen.
They actually released this at Sundance.
Yeah, they do that with most of their shorts.
What's the reaction been? Do you know?
It's been great. It's been it's really a lot of the media, at least that I've seen, the headlines have been, this is a new level kind of experience. I'm probably blowing it out of proportion, and then your expectations are going to be high. I would just say, obviously, it's free on the Oculus Store. If you have a Rift, you owe it to yourself to check this out.
All right. Other Oculus news or application news. We had update to Big Screen VR. Big Screen is the screen sharing social application that we use for our VR podcast at the end of last year.
That's right. Yeah.
Some basic things that we really want to see, like you can all control desktop audio streaming. It's not just the admin of the room that can control it. So
That's
now
good.
Everyone can contribute.
You still need to have that banana thing installed, though.
Yes.
They're still working on an in-house solution for that, but everyone needs to have that third-party software installed to make it work. But now anyone can share their audio.
Yeah, and then you can lock and change the audio. Yeah, so they listed out a bunch of the features that are coming down. The one that I was most interested in is they're working on better FPS for multiplayer stuff. I'm excited.
What do you mean?
That's what they listed on their roadmap.
Big
going
screen?
forward. Yeah.
Frames per second?
Yeah.
All right. I guess the biggest news, we kind of buried it, is there's a new VP at Facebook in charge of all VR.
Yeah. This came out of nowhere.
Is this their CEO?
No, they're abandoning that term.
Yeah.
So the leader. So Zuckerberg is going to be
He's
CEO of Oculus by Facebook.
And his title is VP of virtual reality.
Okay, so this is Hugo Barra.
I think this bodes well that it's like Oculus and VR is such an integrated part of Facebook that they're sort of their own product line now.
So what does he bring to, and what has he done in the past? Because he worked on Google Android, and most recently, for the past couple of years, he's been at Xiaomi
In China.
in China on their Android phones.
And people really like those phones.
I think maybe he brings this product scaling.
Apparently he worked at Android early on and brought it from infancy to something that was a mature, usable operating system. He was around there for the 2.0, 3.0 days where it really advanced. That's what I read. I use a Nexus 7. That's my experience with Android, but people have a lot of respect for him, and so I think it sounds like a wise choice.
All right.
Happy to see where that goes.
Yeah. Hopefully that means that we'll hear announcements this year about new products and new technologies coming out of Oculus.
I will say, whenever I see companies do this, I gotta wonder what it's like to be like on the inside of Facebook, because they have so many employees, so many people who love VR so much that they've dedicated their lives to it already. And yet here comes this other guy who has a lot of management experience and has clearly, done product development and understands how to talk to people and is a good figurehead. But I feel very strongly that if you can hire from the inside, you should.
Well, I think that you can't have egos about it.
Yeah.
Right. You have to believe it's the good thing for the company and the brand and technology. And it is different than if you're hiring someone to lead a phone development or an Android, because that's Android. I guess basically Android is the most comparable because Android was launched as an open mobile OS initiative, and so you did have true believers in that type of platform, and it is what it is now. But VR, you also have, in the same sense, these true believers in VR as a platform and as an emerging technology. But for the people who were at Oculus from the very beginning, they have to just trust management and trust that this is good for developing the product side of it, because it needs to be a product for the technology to have a future.
I got an interesting tweet, I guess a few of us did, from one of our listeners who suggested we check out the disposable virtual reality headset cover.
Now, is this what Steve Lin was talking about last week when talking about those?
Oh, maybe.
It must have been, because Henrik Johansson is the one who tweeted at us, and it's the perfect solution. You get 100 of them in a pack, and if you're gonna use your VR headset at a party, I would certainly buy a pack of these.
We got some of those VR covers.
Well, yeah, but those are permanent. You can leave those on there,
or you can wash them.
This is like a toilet cover.
I haven't liked using the VR cover because it changes the ergonomics for me.
Yeah, and a lot of
So
these
I wonder-
gasket type things that you see them at demo events, like for Vive events specifically, these kind of white, tissue
That's what this
intermediate. And this is like that, except this one I believe wraps around or has loops, so it sticks to the sides of the head better.
You see the photo?
Yeah.
It's,
It goes around your ears, makes you look a ninja.
it basically is a costume.
Wow, it's like a SARS guard except for your face.
Yeah,
for VR. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Oculus is, last week you guys mentioned that people in the Oculus subreddit and also in the community, some people have had problems, erratic problems with tracking with their systems, whether 2 cameras or 3 cameras. And Oculus, it may be in the most public way of addressing this, is releasing a couple of blog posts guiding people on how to do room scale setup. It's a series of blog posts. Their first one, I believe, was about tips. They called them tips for setting up killer room scale VR, which I thought were, what did you think, Jeremy? Are they useful tips? Were you already doing these things?
I only have 2 cameras, so I understand some of the problems so far. So I just breezed through them.
I read through them too. I mean, they're still advocating those 2 front sensors on the desk, which I don't love because they're easily jostled, and that sort of disrupts things. They talked about
you're free to mount them.
Yeah, I
right?
guess so. But I mean, I mean, when they're on your desk, it's harder to figure out where to mount them.
The only solution is to have a third thing that they can triangulate with that is permanently mounted somewhere.
That's what they are suggesting here to a certain extent. They talked
with
about
3 cameras in the corners of your room.
Yeah, the third camera 3D printing mount, put it in the back of the room. They have a couple different setups. I thought what was interesting is that it's sort of a throwaway message at the very bottom. They're basically like, don't go more than 3 sensors.
Now that ties into the second post in this series, which specifically talks about USB controller hosts. And we know this is the limiting factor in Oculus in terms of sensors. For coverage, because it's an active camera system, every sensor you add uses computer resources, specifically USB resources. And so in this blog post, they talk about the difference between USB 3 and USB 2. And basically, they're recommending, they know every computer is different. Every computer, each port, even though you might see 8 USB ports in the back of a computer, some of those are tied together over a host controller on your motherboard or on a daughter card, and you can overtax those resources with the cameras. So they recommend if you can figure it out, it's a maximum of 2 sensors per host controller for USB 2, and they would not recommend more than 1 camera for USB 2.0. So USB 3.0, you can use 2 cameras, and USB 2.0, 1 on USB 2 is the best way to set up 3 cameras currently. I think some people they think that they can use a USB splitter and with a power adapter and just plug all 3 or 4 cameras into one USB. That's gonna overburden the host controller.
Last story. Let's circle back to Disney. Circle Vision.
All right, so this is something, when we talk about VR, there's a line between room scale and or like real VR, spatial presence, right, and 360 video, right? 360 video really isn't VR, but they use similar technology. You're still using the same headset in a lot of cases to enjoy both experiences. At Disney, I saw what I thought to be the best use of a 360 video system. And it was something that was invented in the 1960s. It's called Circle Vision. And do you remember going to E3 back in the day, and EA would have that booth with a video screen that would go 360 all around you?
Yes.
This is technology that's basically like that. They film these 20-minute long videos, documentary video series, touring different. It was at Epcot. They had one at the China Pavilion, the French Pavilion, and the Canadian Pavilion. These 20-minute long films, basically, and they were filmed with these special camera rigs that were essentially the film rig equivalent of a 360 GoPro camera setup, with how you would have 6 or 12 GoPros arranged and stitch the image together. And here the stitching done in the 60s and 70s, there was no stitching. It was just using 9 projectors, projecting images from every side, and you'd have to have a place for the projector. So the Circle Vision system actually didn't have had seams. It wasn't a seamless image all the way across. If you Google Circle Vision, you'll see images. The very first image shows you there's about maybe a foot, because they're massive screens. Think of them still as theater-sized screens, 4 by 3 or 1 by 1. But there's about a foot width seam between each of the screens. But what that seam allowed it to do, the directors in the video to do, was to frame these 180-degree or 360-degree videos in a way that focused my attention on the subject, and also allowed them to edit a movie so it didn't always have to be this 360 experience. I've watched a fair amount of 360 videos in Google Cardboard and in VR, and I think videographers are still figuring out how to shoot and edit those videos. For the vast majority of time, you don't pay attention to what's above you. There's not a lot happening above you, and there's not a lot happening below you. So I believe that having the images cropped in the top and bottom, and having this kind of circle vision, this ring of screens around you, frames your documentary in a way where you're not necessarily immersed. You don't feel like you're in that environment, but you're getting this kind of IMAX plus view of a scene that's still immersive, and it gives you a wider canvas to tell a story, and it also allows you to change focal lengths.
I thought this closed down a while ago.
No, they still have them.
Holy crap! Did you see the camera?
The
Yeah.
camera is pretty amazing.
It's oh my god!
And they filmed these in the 60s.
It's
all film.
It's like 8
right?
film cameras all mounted to a center thing, and they're
Yeah.
pointed vertically upwards
Right.
to a mirror
Right.
that reflects it at 45 degrees.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
And there are actually some behind-the-scenes images where the directors, they filmed, like, to make these mini documentaries, which are 15 to 20 minutes long, they filmed like 100 different scenes and then picked like 20 of them. So they edited, they had way more footage than they ended up using, so they could actually edit down. I think a lot of problems with 360 video right now, and especially drone photography right now, is because it's so tough to make those videos. You only have so much battery life, so much to shoot. People are they're editing based on what they have already. Like you have to use everything you have. You're not overshooting. It's not as plotted out as what they did here, where they actually storyboarded, 100 different shots and then edited something together.
You saw this at Tomorrowland? Is that where it was?
Epcot. Oh. Yeah. The thing that the seams actually also do in terms of editing is allow the films not to all have to be 360 for every scene as well. So you have your standard big, landscape shot, right? So imagine like it's a shot with movement, and movement is fine. Lateral movement with this was totally comfortable because it wasn't fully encompassing. You had the top and bottom cut off, right? You're just looking at movie screens. So like your lateral movement, you're flying above a glacier or something, right? And you want that to be immersive. So you make use of all 9 screens around you. But then if you want to zoom in on something in VR and in 360 video, you can't change focal length normally because you can't zoom in because it's all around you, right? That's a limitation of cinematography. Here, because you have your screen split up to 9 segments, you can then cut to a scene where you have the center image is zoomed in, and then you have tight shots, 9 tight shots for details around different things, or just 3 videos that are repeated around.
When you're in it, is it dark all around?
It's dark all around.
Oh, okay, so there's no lighting to point you, ambient lighting that helps you direct your experience.
But because of the seams, you have natural framing. Mm-hmm. So you would always know where your subject was because it would always be in the center of one of the screens. You would never have it in the seams. And I know filming 360, a lot of people worry about, okay, what if my subject's caught in between the edges of the lenses and the stitching is weird? And you have these people, like here, they built in that problem into their filming technique, into their projection technique. So you would never have that problem because they would frame for that.
They compensate for it.
And so it's not about the same kind of immersion of putting you in that spot and making you feel like you're standing in that place. It's giving you a bigger canvas, but using the limitations of their filming technique to actually help with the storytelling. And I found that incredibly compelling.
Testing this week. Hey, what have you guys been testing?
What if I told you everything you know about wiring is about to change?
Oh boy. Imagine a world?
I have, I saw Adafruit carry this stuff. It's silicon wire. The sheathing around the wire is covered in silicon, and it just changes everything about wiring as far as I'm concerned. I love it. I've been making a few projects recently where I have to bundle everything together, bend a lot of wires, and more often than not, if you do that with small projects, the wires break off their solder points, or the wires themselves start to fray. And this wiring is just so manipulable, and it's just very, very easy to work with, and I highly recommend it. I found it. You can get it on Amazon for a relatively cheap amount. You get there's 2 packs of 5 in different colors.
What gauge?
All different gauges.
Oh.
Anything you want. I think I got 26 gauge, but there's anything you need up there, and it's all very reasonably priced. If you do any kind of small wiring projects, do yourself a favor. This is like getting the right tool for the job.
So Sean actually picked this out as one of his favorite things, I think, 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
He mentioned this, and it felt like in the future, it's like the fiber optics of wiring. Like the way they bundle differently, they flow differently.
Yeah.
You lose the rigidity, right, when you use them, so you can't like bend them around creases.
Well, that's solid
same
core. Yeah, you normally wires that hold their shape. That's solid core wiring. This is strictly stranded core wiring.
Okay.
And stranded core in general doesn't hold its shape anyway. So no, it's not for that, and it's not for shoving into a breadboard either. But if you want to manipulate the wire and have a lot of flexibility, literally and figuratively, check it out.
Very cool. I came back from my trip and I found something I ordered on Amazon that finally arrived, and I love it. It's a charging stand for the Apple Watch, and it looks like. Have you seen this, Jeremy?
I'm just looking at it now.
It
This
looks,
is
look at this.
hilarious.
Look at this, Jeremy.
Yeah,
It looks like a tiny Macintosh.
I love it, but that's been on Thingiverse for about a year now.
This one, yes, and I know that. This is it's rubber, so it's really easy to put and remove your charging cable.
I bet so.
So
That's
worth
good.
the $15.
That's good.
You could also print your own, absolutely, and paint your own.
Yeah, someone put a screenshot of an old Mac OS on their watch and then installed it in there and said, "That's how I want to look at my watch forever."
What? You could just buy a small OLED screen and a controller.
Right. That's not actually. I like this idea.
Oh.
This is totally ridiculous, and I support it fully.
All right. And then I borrowed Joey's Sony A6500 that he's been testing. He's been using it for a couple video shoots. I borrowed
He
it
used
for
it
a
in a
weekend.
ping pong cannon one day build.
Yeah. And so he's actually gonna be reviewing that. But I found its autofocus capabilities highly impressive.
Yeah, that's what it's known for.
Yeah, it did that your typical have a puppy run at you and take pictures, and most of the shots were in focus.
It beats all the A7s in that regard.
I hate this. As somebody that was like almost ready to buy the A6000, I hate hearing about like the improvements along that line.
Well, it's
Because it's
expensive.
like, here's another few.
I think even the A6000 beats the A7s. It's all good.
All right. Anything else you guys been testing?
Cold medicine, right?
Yeah. Oh man, Mucinex. Yeah. But the off-brand stuff.
Multivitamins for me.
Okay. I hope you guys feel better then. We'll be back next week with another podcast still entitled is on a little bit of a hiatus right now while Adam is on tour. But once he gets back, or not on tour, he's traveling and then going on tour. But we're gonna start recording once he gets back.
Do you
from
think
his
he's going to
travels.
do any of those road diaries that he's done in the past when he's been on tour?
I don't know. He's definitely gonna be tweeting a lot. I just don't know.
I hope so, because I really loved it when he described all the different things he does in different cities.
Yeah.
I thought that was really clever.
And then we have some videos this week. The ping pong machine gun cannon that you referenced, Kishore, that one day build is up on the site. And we have another build going up next week that Adam did for his Secret Santa. So
Oh.
check that out.
Not
Yeah.
bad.
All right. So thanks for everyone for joining this week. Thank you guys. Of course, you can find Jeremy and Kishore online at Jerware and at Science Quiche, respectively.
I've apologized to anyone following me on Twitter. I have a very resist mentality going right now.
Don't apologize for that.
A lot of people I follow on Twitter have gone from their typical MO to resist mentality.
I'm hoping to get back to normal a little bit next week.
Well, let's hope something we'll have more positivity in world events that would lead that to happen. And of course, you can find us at Tested.com or our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching if you watch us on YouTube. And we have an outro this week.
Another one from
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Justin, a.k.a. Speed. Did you walk around the house like this, like holding your chin a
I
little
put
bit?
on my Lennon glasses. Yeah, I made everyone call me Steve.
See ya.
The correct answer to the best screensaver is Hyperspace by Terry Welsh of the Really Slick Screensavers.
No doubt.